This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Also sponsored by Mask Design, boldly going where no masking kit has gone before. Take your model to the next level of detail and accuracy with a masking kit from Mask Design. Visit Mask Design on Facebook or click the ordering link in the notes below the video. Also sponsored by Paragrafix. Add superior detail and accuracy to your models with photo etch, resin, and multimedia accessories from your first source for photo etch parts and more. Paragrafix. They count rivets so you don't have to. Visit Paragrafix at www.paragrafix.biz or click the link in the notes below this video. Hey, what's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to the Engine's Chair. So finally, after all this time, we're finally getting to the nuts and bolts of trying to wrap this model up. We're getting close to the end. Probably 2, maybe 3 more episodes. The base itself may be a separate episode. I'm not sure yet. But we got maybe 2 or 3 more episodes left to get this wrapped up. This episode is going to be dealing with the top. I figure at least one to deal with, or I'm sorry. This episode is going to deal with the bottom of the saucer. We got at least one to deal with the top of the saucer. And then I figure probably another episode to deal with the remaining little bits and pieces that have to be taken care of with this. And then, like I said, possibly a separate episode just for the base. So that's, like I said, 2 or 3 episodes. And we should have this wrapped up. It's 25 days to Wonderfest. So I don't know if we'll get it done by then. I don't like to rush on things, as you can tell. I like to take my time on my builds and work on them. And then do some other things and then come back to it and work on it and just take my time with it. I don't like to be rushed on it or feel like I'm pressed to get it done in any certain amount of time, because that's when you start making mistakes, when you start rushing on things. And it's better just to kind of, in my opinion, just to kind of work on it, sit back, look at it, maybe reevaluate some things on the model, and then start working back on it. But anyway, so like I said, the plan is this episode we're going to deal with the bottom of the hull, work on a couple things, and start working on finishing this model up. So without further ado, give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench. We'll get to work. All right, here we go. So finally to the point where we're ready to start using the Mask Design mask to get our Aztec pattern put on here and everything else done on it. I'm really excited to get into this part because I get to use Gary's masks, which are excellent always, and he's always got a great design to them, and they're easy to apply and use. But on top of that, I get to go into some of this detail painting that I've been talking about these last couple months, especially with this back area. Now, unfortunately on this one, it was too late to put in these vents. I don't want to take a chance cutting these out and cutting the wire on the inside. So unfortunately, these are the molded vents that are part of the kit, and this triangle part as well. I know I've got some stuff that I've glued to the inside of this, so I can't remove that either on this model. So a little late for those. I'll get to use them on the other one that I'm test fitting them on and doing them on. I did fortunately get the redone bottom warp core ejection port crystal, whatever you want to call it, but this housing down the bottom here. So I'll get to do some custom painting on that as well, because this is there's a little bit of a paint detail to this that has to be done, as well as I'm going to try to do some of the gray pattern that you see. Let me pull this picture up again in case you haven't seen the previous episode where I showed this. But you can see on the bottom there where there's kind of a lighter gray and excuse me, a lighter gray and then a darker gray pattern that goes on that trapezoid rear area there, and kind of kind of surrounds this crystal housing. So I've got some detail painting I want to do there. It's going to be a little harder to do on this because it doesn't have those etched in areas like the ones I redid for these lower vents. So it's going to be a little bit harder to do on this, but I'll do the best I can with it, figure something out with it. But I will be able to do some additional work, maybe a little bit of custom masking, we'll see. But this one's pretty much going to have to be the way I'm going to have to deal with the way the kit is on this one, and then on the next one I can do a little more of an accurate paint job on the bottom. But so anyway, we're ready to get started on this. I've got the top's all ready to go. Warp crystal's already painted, warp crystal housing. So this is all ready to go for painting. Just got to keep my wires out the way here. And I'm going to start. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with the application of the masks. Gary does an excellent video series on applying the masks for his mask set. So the only thing I'm going to mention about some of these masks is if I run into any issues. And one thing I will say, as great as a job that Gary does on these, you do have to be careful. Sometimes the vinyl, I can't speak today. Sometimes the vinyl cutter doesn't quite cut the line all the way, and I don't think I had a little bit of a boo-boo on one of these. It might be on the other set, but it didn't separate, so I had to kind of use my hobby knife right here on this one. I don't know if you'll be able to make it out very well. Focus on that a little bit. Let's see here. But you can see this one here, it didn't quite separate, so when I pulled it off, it kind of ripped the corners off of this. So that's an easy fix, though. When I go to apply this mask, I can just use, he does provide additional little masking strips, so I can use those to kind of fix these corners on this. But other than that, I mean, there were very few issues with weeding these. It's just I think there was this spot was the main one. Most of the other ones, there were 2 or 3 other spots, but I was able to catch it in time and kind of do a better cut to it than what that did. That just kind of ripped the corners off of that one. But other than that, they all turned out great, and it's only a minor issue to work with when dealing with the masks. So not Gary's fault. It's just sometimes when you're using a vinyl cutter, I mean, I have my Cricut, and sometimes I have the same issue with that one. And I'm sure Gary's using a much better one than I do because he's got some much smaller and finer masks that he's able to cut with his that mine couldn't even come near. But so it's just one thing. Just be careful when you're peeling these up. Do it slowly. Make sure that it is separating from the parts that you want to leave behind, and be careful that if it starts to lift up on one, it won't let it go. Just take your hobby knife, just do a little bit of a light cut to it, so it'll break away cleanly, instead of ripping the corners like it did on that one. But I've got these all weeded for the lower saucer, so I'm gonna get these applied. And like I said, I'm not gonna go into a lot of detail with it. I'm gonna get these applied, get the first pattern painted, and then we'll come back and take a look before we move on to the second pattern. So stay tuned. All right, guys, so I just got about this mask off and ready to go, and I just want to mention one thing that I didn't see in Gary's video, him talk about this, but it does say it in the instructions. But just to cover this back half, so you've got a little bit of like a partial panel here, and if you look at the instructions, it says to use half of one sheet and then half of the other on the other side. But doesn't really talk how to lay this down. So what I did was I basically just laid it down like I would any of the other panels, and you can leave it like this. You don't have to do what I did on this side, which you can see here. But what I did was I came back and trimmed it, and all I did was take my hobby knife and just real lightly, because it doesn't take a lot of pressure to cut these vinyl masks. but just real lightly. You've got this edge here, which you can feel with your fingernail. You've got this edge here. Just run your hobby knife right along that. You got to watch these smaller ones, because these smaller ones might like to move on you. And I'll just leave that one alone because there's really not that much there to cut off. But just lightly run your knife right along it. And then what you can do is come back in and just remove the rest of that mask. And now, like I said, you don't have to do this. You can just leave it on there because you're going to mask this whole part off anyway. So it really doesn't matter if this mask is sticking out here. But if you're one of those kinds of guys that likes to just everything look nice and neat and clean, which is not going to anyway, because when I go to mask this off with the green tape, it's not going to be all nice and even and clean. But if it tickles your fancy, you can do it this way and just remove. I can get under this mask here without cutting my paint. And that's the other thing too you got to be careful of, is if you do this, you don't want to nick the paint up doing it. And so I mean, that's pretty much it. You can do that, or you can just leave all the mask intact. It doesn't matter. This is going to get masked off anyway, so rather than take a chance of messing anything up, you might just feel better off just leaving all the masking in place, and it makes it a little bit easier. Especially if this is your first masking set, because sometimes plucking these masks off with the blade of a knife can be nerve-wracking. Probably the first model or two that I did, I made the mistake of trying to do the refit with a masking set, and I just totally nicked up the surface because I wasn't really comfortable in using a knife and plucking up the edge and that. But I've gotten, okay, don't know what that was. Alright guys, sorry about that. I forgot to turn my do not disturb on my phone, and got a phone call which I need to take anyway, so that's fine. But you can see I've started removing yes, Tiberius is coming to do his inspection and to chew on my wires. No, nobody. Let go. Go on, go play. Sorry about that. But so you can see I've removed the mask. I got the layer. I'd like it's a little bit. I'd like my Aztecs to be a little more subtle. So it's a little darker than what I would like, but not so dark that I'm worried about it. It looks good. I'm happy with it. Gary's masks are just so easy to use, and it does such a great job on everything. But I just want to touch on one thing. I was talking about these little half, not even half really. It's more like a third of a mask that you need to cover these little gaps right here. You can see how this side turned out here. Now I was talking about trimming this, or you could leave it in place. But one thing I realized when pulling these masks off, if you don't trim it, if you don't trim that mask, you're going to have a hard time removing these if your plan is to leave all this masking in place so that when you do step 2, which is the blue, you don't have to remask everything. You're going to want to trim these like I showed, so that way you can just come in and leave the mask in place and just pluck these off and be done with it. So just one thing I want to mention real quick. I'm getting ready to move on to the second step, which is applying the blue. And once I get that all masked off, we'll come back and we'll take a look again. But just want to point that out. So give me a minute, we'll come back. Alright, so I'm working on these masks for the blue color. You can see I got most of it done, but I just wanted to go over a couple tips that have worked for me. So Gary talks about, in his video, he talks about kind of yanking these up a little bit at a time, and it kind of tends to pull and leave behind a lot. But what I found was, if you take your little squeegee card here and just kind of rub them, give them a good rubbing before you do that, what I found is that it tends to make a lot more of the pieces stick. And in some cases, I've been able to pull them completely off without any pieces still. There we go. That's most of them. There's 1, 2, 3. There's 3 pieces left in here, so it does help a lot to kind of give it a quick rub down with the your little squeegee card that you get from Gary. And the other thing is, when you go to pluck these out, just use the tip of your hobby knife and kind of drag across the ones that are left in there. And a lot of times, if it pushes it under the decal, don't worry about trying to dig it out, because it's not going to hurt anything. At worst, you'll have to pluck it off the hull later when you go to pull these masks up, but it pretty much opens it all up. And if you don't get them all, the third thing is, don't lose your mind over it. There's a lot of openings for the blue paint on these. So if you find that there's 1 or 2 that you don't get out, or even half a dozen, I mean, there's plenty of openings on these to where I would not lose my mind over just having 1 or 2 left in place. Like there's one right here that I could try to pluck out, but I don't want to mess up my paint doing it. So hang on, I got a cat in my lap that's got to get down, kid. But yeah, just don't lose your mind over it. If you can't get them all opened up, as long as you got the majority of them open, you'll be good. It's just a random blue pattern to add on, so you don't really have to have every single one open. Gary has plenty of these openings for the blue paint, for the blue paneling. So just a couple of real quick tips there. I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to get that blue put on, and we'll come back and we'll take a look at it. Sorry guys, just one more quick thing to mention. So when you get to this last one, you'll have 1 panel left, and I basically just cut it in half. You can see here, and pull it up. See, that one came completely out. Didn't have to pull any off of that. And then you just use the 1 half on one side and 1 half on the other to fill in that little gap. And that's it. Pretty much done. Now what I'm going to do is take some of those, oh, I got to find my black lines here. Stuck somewhere around here. Take some of those black lines that Gary, here they are, that Gary provides you with, and then fill in these little gaps that you have in here, if you have any at all. You may not have any. This kit, I've had it for several months. Gary sent it to me probably, when did this kit come out? Last summer. And I'm still working on it. But it does shrink a little over time, so I may have more gaps than what you may have. So if you got to fill in any gaps, just take some of these lines and just fill them in. So I'm going to do that. Get the blue on here. We'll come back. All right, so this would have been a lot easier to do before I put the lower sensor dome on, but I didn't really think much about it. So for future reference, especially since I didn't do any sanding when I attached it, I basically used perfect plastic putty around the edges and was able to use a Q-tip and clean it up. So I could have waited till I put I could have waited to put the sensor dome on until after I did this. You could still do it. It's just a little more tedious trying to the masks go on pretty easy. They conform pretty easily to the shape of the lower sensor dome. But now I've got to sit here and do the best I can to tape off the sensor dome. The only great thing is that with this being craft paint, if it somehow gets under my masking or gets on anything, I can come in with a Q-tip and clean it up, and I don't have to worry about having to come back over and totally repaint the lower sensor dome. So, plus, there's still a pattern that we got to paint on the lower sensor dome. So even if I do get a little bit under the masking here, it's not going to hurt anything. So let me go ahead and get the tan on here and come back and take a look at it. All right, so I've got all the Aztec patterns done on the bottom here. Focus just a little bit and you can see how that turned out. Looks great. Awesome work, if I do say so myself, but it's only made easy because of the masks from Mass Design. So that's done. So now is the fun part. I get to start testing some stuff out, because now what I need to find out are Gary's masks for the lower sensor dome compatible with the dome that I made for this that's a little more accurate. So I'm going to test these out. And I've got the first one here. I dropped it. Got some cat hair on it. Cats. So we're going to test this out. Let's see if we can get this in place. What I may have to do is go off of this forward edge instead of having it right up against the dome. Let's try it right there and see. Get this clear removed, and then I can mold this around a little bit better. Alright, so there's a little bit of a difference. I'm going to have to do a little extra masking around this to make these work, but these will work for getting the main part of the patterns on here, and we'll get it all together. I'm going to get it all together, paint it up, and then I'll let you take a look at it, and I'll go over whatever I had to do to make some adjustments to make these masks work with my aftermarket part that I've got here. So give me a little bit to work on that, and we'll come back and take a look. Alright, so the bad news is that the masks from Mask Design are not compatible with this lower sensor dome that I made, and it turned out, I tried to reuse some of the stuff from it. It turned out terrible. I'm not happy with it at all. Again, nothing to do with the Mask Design masks. It's just that they're not compatible with the this aftermarket printable part that I made. So I am going to remove all this. Fortunately, with it being craft paint, I can just use a wet rag and remove what I've got on there and start over. And I think I'm going to have to go into my Cricut and make some, try to make some paint masks that will be compatible with this, and so it'll work. So that's going to take me a little bit to do. So won't be but a couple seconds for you, but it might be a couple days for me working on this. So I'll be back here in just a bit. Alright guys, so I came up with my own masking, and it turned out a little better. Still got a little more work to do. I'm working on the masking bit for this still, but you can see how that looks right now. I've got a couple little things to add, little touches to add to it, but that's the first pass at it. So turned out a little bit better, a little happier with it. I won't be completely happy with it till I finish and get the final little details put onto that. But what I'm working on now is this back end here, and I went a little dark on this. I'll probably lighten it up. I'll just come back over it with some I'll decant some of the base coat into my airbrush and just lightly come over this and tone it down some. That's what I had to do with the gray up here, and I think it looks a lot better blended in now. So I'll come back over this with a light coat as well and tone it down. I'll probably just paint the whole thing, the base grays that I need, and then come back and tone it all down at the same time. But what I'm working on here is this detail back here. And you can see I'm working on there. I got to clean it up yet. I just put some paint in there, and what I'm doing is basically just coming in. I just made a really thinned out version of this color paint, which is my my folk art smoke screen, and basically just taking a brush and dropping it into the existing ridges on this kit to create that line pattern back here. And if you thin it out, it'll just sit in the trenches. It won't sit as much on the raised areas, and then after it dries you can just come back over it with I'll probably use a fine point Q-tip to come back over this and clean it up some. But as long as you try to focus on mainly just getting it in the ridges and not on the if you get it on the end raised areas, it tends to not flow into the ridges, whereas if you get it on the bars in between, it'll pretty much just float down path of least resistance, I guess, and it'll go down into these ridges real nice. But that's basically how I'm doing this detail and getting that painted on there. And you can see how that's turning out. So yeah, just take your paint, thin it out, whatever your choice of paint is, let it kind of sit in there. And since this is craft paint, I can just come back with, like I said, a wet Q-tip and clean it up when I'm done. But if you're using like acrylic based paints or any of the kind of panel paints that you use, you're going to want to clear coat this first, because you're going to need to come in with some mineral spirits probably and clean it up a little bit after that. But so that's what I'm working on. I'm going to work on this some more, and we'll come back and see what my progress here is in a bit. All right, so I got a little ahead of myself. Sorry, I did not record a whole lot or anything about this back here. So I've shown screenshots of the studio model before, and I used that photo to kind of do the best I could with this. This is the only mod on this one is just the lower sensor, or the lower crystal here. I did mods for these like I showed before, but not on this kit, and I did a mod for this trapezoid. So I had to work with what I had on this kit as far as painting in some of the details that are on the studio model. So that being said, when I do the next build with all my mods in place, I should be able to get a little bit closer of a match to what the studio model looks like. So that being said, I think it turned out pretty well. You can see the detail on the back there, and that gray on the studio model does come all the way up to the tip here somewhere. I can't tell exactly where, so I just ended mine right behind where the pylon is going to attach. I'm pretty sure it ends before the front edge of the pylon, so I just went ahead and ended it right here. That's about where the pylon should come across at it. So I got that painted up. I used, let's see, used my smoke screen, folk art smoke screen for the base color for the, well, actually, I'm sorry. I put that on first, and I did all my masking. I'll show you a picture real quick of the masking I did. I did take a picture of the masking. I just didn't video this. So that's what the masking looked like after I applied the first color, the smoke screen. I did my masking, and then I did my second color, which was this folk art pale gray. And that's the majority of what you see on here, because obviously once you remove the masking, you get that darker gray comes through. So I got all that painted. I came in, I made a mask using my Cricut to paint the dish with, at least this outer area here. I masked off the center part, masked off the other part, and just painted this blue part here. And then what I did was I removed the masking, and to do these little kind of spindles, I guess you could call them, in here, these little spokes, what I did was I took some of the same blue and I put it in a cup, and I just thinned it out a little bit more than what it was. And then I just took a brush, a very fine tip brush, and just got a dab of it on there and just came in, and I'll show you real quick because I do have a little touch up I got to do here. And I just took a big blob of that and dropped it into each one of these, and because it's so thinned out with I use glass cleaner. That glass cleaner evaporates and it leaves that paint in the bottom here. There's a couple of spots where it sometimes will build up on the sides, and when it dries you'll leave a little bit of the undercoat still visible. So that's why I'm coming in and just touching up right now. But it's real easy to paint this. Just come in, like I said, drop a drop of the color you want in there, let it sit, let it dry, see how if you need another coat or not, like I'm doing now. Just come in and put you another drop in, and it's real easy to do that way. So that's pretty much all the touch-up I had to do on that. It actually turned out really nice. But that's how I've got that painted up. You'll also notice on the dome, I've got a slight silver finish to this. And it's not overly, I don't think it's overly silver. It's just a nice reflective finish. And what I did for that was I took my, excuse me, I took my white pearl paint from Creatix, and I took my silver from Craftsmart. You could use any silver, and you could also use any white pearl. But I did a 1-for-1 mix of this. I did 2 drops of the pearl, 2 drops of the silver, and basically put it in my airbrush and just lightly brushed it on until I had a coat that I liked. And let me see if I can focus here a little bit. I do have a little bit of a touch-up on this I've got, but you can see how that turned out. You can see I've got a little bit of a touch-up here I've got to do. I think that's it. Just a little bit right there where when I pulled the mask off, the paint wasn't quite dry all the way, and I rubbed it a little bit. So, but you can see how that it's just it's not a very, I don't think, overly powerful silver, but it is silver. So, oh, I also want to notice too that you can see how I did because Gary's mask didn't quite fit my aftermarket part. I did make some of my own masks and kind of mask off some areas. I used some gray. I used a little bit of blue up here, and then I also thinned out the tan you use for the Aztec. I thinned it out just a little bit more, and you can see it's just, and my lighting's not the best. I think you can see a little bit of the pattern there. It's just a very light pattern to it, and I'm happy with it. I think it's fine the way it is. So this whole thing needs a clear coat, but I'm going to wait until I get the model done, just clear coat the whole thing at one time. So what I've got left on the underside is I've got to do the phaser banks yet. And you'll remember I removed the raised panels on these, and all that's there are the little beads that I put in place. So unfortunately, I was kind of hoping that the masking set from Gary would have some masks for that, but it doesn't. I think the mask for the 1350 refit, I think, comes with masks for doing that. I'd have to look back at it to be sure, so I don't know. Maybe somebody correct me if it doesn't, but I thought it did. But that's okay because I've got a Cricut, so I've got a vinyl color. So I went in and I made, you can see here, I made some vinyl masks so I can paint those on. And the way this will work, I'll try to show you real quick. This is how I'm going to do this. Just pull off the outer square first. If I get my knife under it, there we go. And just take the outer square and put it in place where it looks centered. Not quite there. Might be better if I put a little bit of like a tick mark or something here where I can see. But I just line up the top edge of that with the panel line. And then what I'll do is I'll mask all these off. I'm going to mask off the RCS thruster. So I can do those and the RCS thrusters on the bottom at the same time because they're going to be the same yellow. I do need to do something with the RCS thruster though. I may have to make a mask for that because it needs to have a red outline just like the phaser banks. So the phaser banks, and the way these will work too, the phaser banks, what you'll see is I'll come in, I'll do red as much around the edges as possible, but if it gets all over it doesn't matter. I'll do red and then I'll let that dry real good. And you'll notice that on the inside here there's another, I might have to focus this a little bit more. My lighting's kind of, yeah, I think you can see it right there. You see that? A little bit of a mask. What I'll do is I'll pull that out. I'll lay that inside of this mask, and then I'll paint my yellow. And when I pull all that up, if I've done it all right, I'll have my yellow phaser banks and my red outline. So that's how I plan on doing that. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to get that painted. I think that's the last detail I've got to do on the bottom, and then we'll pretty much be ready to wrap this video up. And then next video, we will probably work on the top side, and I want to do the outer sensor bands last. I kind of want to get the top and the bottom done. Oh, I do have one other thing to do though. I do have to do the, I almost forgot, there's this rim, those rim Aztecs you got to put on here. So I've got to put those on too, but there's not a whole lot to show with that. Like I said, I pretty much go by Gary's videos, so his videos do a great job of showing how to do that. So I'm not going to go into detail on that. I'm just going to get it done, and then we'll come back and take a look real quick, and then once this is all done, we'll wrap this video up. So give me a little bit. Alright, so for the most part, that masking worked, but I do have a couple of areas I've got to touch up the red. When I pulled up the mask pulled up some of the red around some of the areas. This one wasn't too bad, but I still got a little spot on this corner here, this edge here, where it took up a little bit of the red paint. So even though I let this dry for a while, it still ended up pulling up some of the paint. That's the only issue with sometimes with the craft paints. Some of them will pull up on you. I have a big issue with, especially if I try to just use a base white craft paint. A lot of times that stuff will just come up on you. But it worked for the most part, so I've just got to come in. I'm going to let this dry real good, at least a day or two, and then I'm going to come in and touch up the red. I think on the flip side, when I do the top, I'm going to clear coat it first, because I did have a little bit leak out in this panel line. Fortunately, it didn't get far, and it didn't really mess up the get far enough to mess up any of the Aztecs. But I'm afraid I'm going to take a hint from that, make sure that in the future I'm going to go ahead and clear coat all this, then come in and do my red. And then what I might have to do to keep that red from peeling up is then put another thin clear coat over top of the red, and then do my yellow. And I know it's a couple extra steps, but it's worth it to not have to come in and deal with this or have to worry about paint getting on. Because if I clear coat this and this paint leaks under and gets on the Aztec, I can just clean it off with water and not have to worry about removing any of the Aztec because it's clear coated. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wait a couple days, let this dry, but I want to get this video out. It's been a couple weeks since I got a video out. We're like 25 days from Wonderfest. I'm hoping to have this build wrapped up by then, but we'll see how it goes. I just, I don't have a whole lot of time to work on my builds because I do a lot of work in my actual job, so it takes up a lot of time. Sometimes 12, 14-hour days. So when I get back, I don't really have a lot of time to deal with the models. So on my days off is when I get most of my work done. So unfortunately, when it comes to this and I've got to let something sit for a couple days and dry, then that kind of knocks me out, and that's why it ends up taking a couple weeks sometimes to get an episode out right now. But what I am going to work on in the meantime is I'm going to get this rim Aztecing done while I'm letting that dry. Get that done, and then this will be completely done except for the RCS thrusters, which I won't do. I think I'm not going to do those until I'm ready to do the top as well, because remember on that one I had a little bit of an offset from the top to the bottom, so I'm going to have to do some work to get those to kind of match up paint wise. So that being said, that's pretty much it for this episode. I'm going to wrap this up so I can get something out to you guys. But I like the progress. I like the way it turned out. I'm real happy with the way the back side here turned out, and I think it looks not exact, but it's a pretty close resemblance of what the studio model looked like. And once I get these done, like I said, the bottom will pretty much be done. And then I've got my clear window inserts that I printed up that I'm going to insert into these windows as well. That'll help with light diffusion and also pulling the light in so that you get nice even lighting, hopefully, around all these windows. So that being said, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Appreciate everybody that's been subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. Costs you nothing, but it helps me out tremendously, especially with my sponsors. And if you've been watching my videos, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my sponsors, Cass over at Lake Monster Details, who will have these aftermarket parts available as soon as possible. Gus over at GCals, Gary over at Mass Design, and Paul over at Paragrafix. Thank you, everybody, for your support, and this model is coming together. Getting close. A couple more episodes, maybe at least 2 or 3 more episodes, because I got to do the top of the saucer, and then there's some other details that got to be done. So we'll wrap that up in the next 2 or 3 episodes. But again, thank you, everybody, for watching. Till next time, keep modeling.